Hello, welcome to this interesting course. My name is Opak Mark. Statistics is the collection, organization, presentation, analysis, and interpretation of data. When you talk of data, data is information in a raw form. And data is collected in form of observation, interviews, questionnaires, experiments, etc. Data is organized in tabular form for easy interpretation, and it can be represented in several ways, including pictograms, pie charts, bar graphs, etc., as we are going to see. Here we are going to look at the grouped data, and we want to see the data collection. In this lesson, we're going to look at the data collection and display. When dealing with large items in the data, we break them into classes. And the number of individual entries in of the data falling into a class is the class frequency. And the top and bottom values of the classes are called the class limits. The top value is the upper class limit, and then the lower value or the bottom value is the lower class limit. Let's look at the frequency distribution table. To come up with this table, or to draw this table, let us first look at some of these terms. That is, we are going to look at what we call the lower class and upper class boundary. Then also need to know what we call the class max or the mid max. Then shall also talk about the class size or class interval or class width. Let's begin by looking at the class boundaries, that is the lower class boundary and the upper class boundary, and we see how we get them mainly. So the first way, let us look at when the classes are not having decimal places. So for classes without decimal places, if we want to get the lower class boundary, we shall subtract 0.5 from the lower class limit. And then for let us look at an example here first of all. If we consider a class of 30, for example, if you consider a class of 30 to 34, that is a class 30 to 34, then the lower class boundary is going to be got by getting the lower class limit. Because if this is the class, this is the lower class limit, this is the upper class limit. So we shall get 30 minus 0.5. And that will give us 29.5. So that will be the lower class boundary. Then to get the upper class boundary, we get the upper class limit, which is 34, and we add 0.5. So in the next one, to get the upper class boundary, we shall get the upper class limit and add 0.5. And that will give us, that is, if you look at this class, we shall get the class limit, the upper class limit is 34, shall get 34 plus 0.5, which will give us 34.5. That is the upper class boundary for this class. Let's also look at for the case where the classes have only one decimal place for classes with one decimal place. So for classes with one decimal place, to get the lower class boundary, we subtract 0.05 from the lower class limit. And then to get the upper class boundary, we add 0.05 to the upper class limit. Let's also look at the class max, or what we call the mid max. This is the midpoint of the class limit. Now, if we consider the class of 30 to 34, then we are saying that the mid-max is going to be 32. So how do we obtain that? We shall just get 30 plus 34 divided by 2. Get the lower class limit plus upper class limit, divide by 2. And that will give us 32. Let's also look at the class size or the class interval or the class width. Now, for us to get the class size or the class interval or the class width, we just simply get this by subtracting. We subtract the upper class boundary minus the lower class boundary. We get the upper class boundary minus the lower class boundary. For example, if you look at the class that you have of 30 to 34, the lower class boundary was 29.5 and then the upper class boundary 34.5. So we shall get 34.5 minus 29.5, which will give us 5. So 5 will be the class width, which is got by getting 34.5 minus 29.5, the upper class boundary minus the lower class boundary. Let's also look at an example here. So we have this question. The following marks were scored by senior 4 students in a certain school. So these are the marks. Then I say, form a frequency distribution starting with 30 to 34. That is a class. With a class of 30 to 34 as the first class. And using classes of equal width or equal length. So remember, for 30 to 34, the width here is 5. Remember, we get the width by getting the upper class boundary minus the lower class boundary. So let us look at that. So here we have our table, which I've come up with. We want to see what we need in the table. This is the data which we need to organize here in this table. So first of all, we need a class there. Then we shall also need class boundary. We shall need a tally, since we need to get the frequency of this data in the different classes in which they fall. So we shall also need that frequency, and then we shall need the mid mark, or what we call the class mark. Now, they told us to start with a class of 30 to 34. So our first class is going to be 30 to 34. So when we maintain that width of 5, it means the next is going to be 35 to 39. The next will be 40 to 44. The next will be 45 to 49. The next will be 50 to 54. The next will be 55 to 59. The next will be 60 to 64. And you can guess the next. That is 65 to 69. Let us also get the class boundary. Now for the lower class boundary, we get 30 minus 0.5. And then for upper class boundary, we get 34 plus 0.5. So it means we shall have 29.5 to 34.5. Then the next will be the same procedure will be followed. And this will be 34.5 to 39.5. And then 39.5 to 44.5. The next is 44.5 to 49.5. The next will be 49.5 to 54.5. Then the next will be 54.5 to 59.5. Then the next will be, that is 59.5 to 64.5. And then the next is 64.5 to 69.5, if we add 0.5 there. Now let's have the tally. We're going to tally this. Let me get a pen here. I want a pen because I want to cross out whatever I've tallied. So the first is, I'm going to first of all circle, then tally. So if I circle the 35, the 50 here, if I circle the 50, I go and tally it. So I look for the class where the 50 falls. you go and look for a class where the 50 falls, and that falls within 50 to 54. So I'm going to put a tally here. Then the next is 54. So I'm going to cancel it out and then come and tally it here, still in the class of 50 to 54. And then the next is 31. So you can circle it or you can cross it out. And that is in the class of 31 is going to be in the class of 30 to 31. Sorry, 30 to 34. And then the next is 56. 56 is in the class of 55 to 59. So we shall put the tally there. Then the next is 38. The next is 38. 38 is in the class of 35 to 39. So we put a tally there. Then the next is 33. 33 is in the class of 30 to 34. So we put a tally here. Then the next is 39. 39, so we first circle the 39 and then tally it. 39 is the class of 35 to 39. So you can see it falls within this. And if you want to get better where that falls actually, you can look at the class boundary and find that 39 is going to be here within that class. So we shall have 39 in that class. And then we have 51. 51 is the class of 50 to 54. And then we have 38. 38 is in the class of 35 to 39. So we put the tally here. And then we have 41. 41 is in the class of 40 to 44. And then we have 69. 69 is in the class of 65 to 69. And then we have 57. 57 is in the class of 55 to 59. So we shall put here. And then we have 63. 63 is in the class of 60 to 64. Put it here. And then we have 50. 50 is in the class of 50 to 54. So I'll put it here. Then the next is 54. 54 is in the class of 50 to 54. We can now make a bundle of 5. So I'll close that bundle. And then we go to the next. That is 40. 40 is in the class of 40 to 44. Put it here. Then the next is 41. 41. 41 is in the class of 40 to 44. So we shall still put it there. The next is 45. 45 is in the class of 45 to 49. Then the next is 48. 48 is in the class of 45 to 49. Then the next is 64. 64 is in the class of 60 to 64 here. Then the next is 59. 59 is in the class of 55 to 59. Put it here. Then the next is 61. 61 is in the class of 60 to 64. So I shall put it here. And then the next is 55. 55 is in the class of 55 to 59. Here. Then the next is 38. 38 is in the class, 36 is in the class of 35 to 39. 35 to 39. And then lastly, we have 52. And that 52 is in the class of 50 to 54. So we add that one. So when you're doing this, make sure that you circle like I've done to avoid repetition. And you can always cross-check again. But you need to be very careful when tallying, because when the tally is wrong, these other things will be, the frequency also will be wrong, and then it will affect your analysis. Now let's get the frequency. So here we have the tally 2, 1, 2. So the frequency is going to be 2. The next is, when you count that, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. The next is 3. Then we add, for the next class is 1, 2. The next is the band of 5 plus 1, that is 6. The next is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the next is 3. Then last we have 1. So that is the frequency. That is the frequency. Now let's get the mid mark. For the mid mark, remember we get the upper class, we get the lower class limit plus the upper class limit and divide by 2. So you get 30 plus 34 divided by 2. So you can get your calculator and then you work out this together. So 30 plus 34 divide by 2, that will give you 32. And then 35 plus 39 divide by 2 will give you 37. 40 plus 44 divided by 2, that is 42. 45 plus 49 divided by 2, that's 47. 50 to 54, that is 50 plus 54 divided by 2, 52. 55 plus 59 divided by 2, that is 57. 60 plus 64 divided by 2, that is 62. And lastly, 65 plus 69 divided by 2, that is going to give us 67. Yeah. Thank you for your attention. We meet in the next lesson.